I'm really excited that we've got Crista joining us online today. So, the highlight of today's meeting, we are really honored to have invited Crista Martin from Harvard University's Dining Services to come deliver a presentation for us today. I don't know about everyone, but I am in awe. I am super excited, and I've got my notepad ready to go as well. So, I'll get started with introducing our speakers. So, joining us today, we have Crista Martin, the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Communications at Harvard University Dining Services. And in her role, Crista coordinates the online and print marketing and communications. And she also spearheads the HUD's strategic initiatives, guiding the planning and implementation of work in areas of sustainability, food donations, business development and planning, customer service, and more. Crista is also a frequent presenter and a volunteer with the National Association of College and University Food Services, including as its regional director and regional conference chair. Crista also serves on the Menu of Change University Research Collaborative, spearheaded by the Culinary Institute of America and Harvard School of Public Health, and was named a food hero by the City of Cambridge in 2015 for her work on HUD's food donations program. And just to give you a bit of background, Harvard University Dining Services serves almost 5 million meals annually through more than 30 different campus operations, and they provide the daily hospitality experience for the majority of Harvard University. The locations that Harvard University Dining Services service are of a range of sizes, scopes, hours, and transactions, but they all operate with a core mandate of minimizing the environmental impact on our community. In addition to the sustainability initiatives focused on procurement and physical plant operations, HUD also does work to address food insecurity, reduce wasted food, and advance consumer food literacy. And Crista has joined us today and will be sharing what they've done in this space and also how they're greening the dining experience for their campus students, staff, faculty, and guests. So I'll now hand over the Zoom stage to Crista.
Wow. Well, thank you very, very much. It's super generous of you to invite me to be with you, and I love to get to connect with people who do what I do and think about the wicked problems that I think about on a daily basis. So I'm really thrilled to be here with you, and I'll look forward to sort of chats and questions. And I'm going to talk you through some of these things that Shirley suggested would be of interest, but I'm happy to field any questions, and we'll just kind of jump in if that's all right. So I am proud to be here from Harvard University Dining Services. In our system on our campus, we are a part of the university. There are other food service operations which run as on other campuses. They might hire a food service operation, but they're not employees of the university per se. They're contractors. But at Harvard, we are employees of the university, just like the faculty, just like other members of the folks who keep the institution going, and that's a very proud thing for us. We do a couple of kinds of operations on our campus. We have catering, which is for things like special events or when there's, an unusual dinner or a guest or something that causes people to need food more in their offices or a special space. We have what we call professional school and campus cafes. And I think those are probably most closely paralleled to what many of you have on your campuses. That is to say, these are retail dining venues that are open to any member of the community to come in and have sort of a transactional food experience. And then we also have undergraduate dining halls where our undergraduate students come and live on campus and take all their meals in in a space that is intended to be more like your home kitchen, right? 100 different items at any given meal, open starting at 7:30 in the morning and running through a late night snack program. And it's more done with a swipe than a swipe of a card that says, yes, I was here, than a declining balance transaction. So, but in total, we do about 23,000 meals a day. And all of those entities still operate with all these same core principles about sustainability and care for our environment and our community. We are financially self-sustaining. That means that all the money that it takes to operate our program comes from these transactions. The university doesn't give us any extra money for anything. So when we're making decisions about programs or initiatives, they are all funded by us as opposed to some, sort of backing from the university. We have a vision framework that prioritizes sort of 5 key areas, but you'll resonate in some of those, how important sustainability and diversity and inclusion are to us, in addition to operating a safe and engaging program. We also have some priorities that help us make decisions as we are trying to tackle so many things during a year. We run them through this sort of screen of priorities and say, does this particular topic or issue matter as we're trying to improve the health, cultural sensitivity, religious sensitivity, or environmental sensitivity of our program to our community, right? It's a way of vetting what we should be focused on. We use a couple of guideposts for how we make decisions about what we're going to serve and how we're going to serve it. One of those is the Eat Lancet Commission. This is an international commission that brought together 37 world-leading scientists to put together what they would recommend to be the diet for feeding our population in a healthy way, but also a way that is gentle for the environment, right, within planetary boundaries. One of those 37 scientists is Dr. Walter Willett, who is a member of the faculty at the Harvard Chan School of Public Health. And he has been a longtime friend of ours, and much like I'm sure many of you have, we have faculty on our campus who are studying the very issues that we're working on a daily basis, and we become their living and learning lab, right? And Walter Willett is one of those, and he was part of the Eat Lancet Commission. This report is available online, and it's a fascinating read about the way we need to be feeding people in order to sustain our planet and address issues of hunger and need. And nutrition. And unsurprisingly, right, it recommends that half of every plate should be fruits and vegetables or plant-based proteins, and that the other half of your plate is all the other stuff, right? Another guidepost we use as we're making decisions and thinking about what we serve and how we serve it is the World Resources Institute. And Harvard was among many institutions that signed on to the Cool Food Pledge, which is a commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from food by 30% over the course of about 10 years, starting from a 2015 benchmark, and I think it ends in 2030, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2025. No, it must be 2030. So at any rate, they're doing very similar work to Eat Lancet. One of the things that they've done is issued this playbook for promoting sustainable food choices. And it's tips and lessons learned from a number of institutions. And they really focus on institutions because at an institutional level, we have the opportunity to impact millions of meals a day. I'm sure if on your campuses you added up how many meals you serve and then how, as a group, you impact the number of meals, on the continent, right? It's a huge impact to teach. We think about the responsibility of teaching a young person how they might nourish themselves and take care of the planet for the rest of their lives. And so we really embed that in the way that we serve food. So we do have a definition of sustainability, and it focuses on purchasing and practices that sustain the health and well-being of the environment, of our community, and of the people who are producing and eating our food. And it's an ongoing process to educate ourselves and educate our community and learn new ways of doing things. And I think part of what I'm hopeful to have with you is a conversation about some of these new ways we've learned to do things and perhaps the ways that you are changing the paradigm as well. So like many institutions, we focus heavily when we think about sustainability on reducing the impact of meat. I think we all acknowledge that meat is one of those hot topics, right? And this is perhaps a particularly American view, right? A lot of emphasis is placed on meat at the center of a plate in a very traditional diet in this country, and changing people's expectations around that is a lot of work. And you get raised with a certain way of doing things, and you think it's the right way, and it's hard to unlearn that. So a big one for us is meat. And so one of the things that we make sure to do is have choices at every meal. We don't believe in making mandates around what people can or cannot eat. Some campuses have made choices to have a meatless Monday, for example. We've never done that. We felt like it was more important to educate people and then give them choices so that if they choose to eat less meat or no meat on a given day, they have an alternative that is healthy and sustaining to them. We try to make parallel choices whenever possible, and we try to make them so that you don't have to ask for the parallel. We worked with a young woman named Stacy Blondin, who is now at the World Resources Institute and one of those people developing that playbook. And she did a study about what would happen if you had, so this Nashville hot chicken sandwich that's on screen. What would happen if you had that available, but you said to people, or you can choose the other one. You just have to tell me you want it. You can't just pick it up. And then she flip-flopped that. What happens if the vegan version is available and you have to request the meat version, right? Whatever's available, people will readily take. When they have to ask for something, they'll eat less of it. So we really try to make those parallel options whenever it's appropriate and possible. And then another thing that we have done is we have a traditional American grill that serves things like hamburgers. We used to have it available at both lunch and dinner. And we took it out of lunch. We thought there were other things that could be served at lunch, and that we, by reducing the service in this one station, we could reduce the overall beef we served. And it did in fact play out that we served 30,000 pounds less of beef, and without much impact on the student experience, right? Something else was in its place and they were happy with that. But it's not just about the meat, right? There are so many other things that play into it. And so it's really important to broaden the focus, because consumers can get stuck on one topic, or they can feel very personal about it. We have people who, for health and well-being reasons, really need a high protein diet. We have a lot of student athletes on our campus, for example. and having them feel nourished and sustained and healthy means that for many of them, meat has to be on the plate. So what are some of the other things we can encourage them to? Well, we can certainly encourage them to those vegetables and fruits. We're also aware that we can't just substitute meat with meat alternatives. For many of our chefs, this has required a little bit of retraining their brains and rethinking about protein and where protein comes from, and that it is not satisfying for many folks to shift from sausage to a plant-based sausage. That's not their goal if their goal is to reduce meat consumption. So working with our chefs to really think more about and embrace natural plant proteins. We also think a lot about the impact of dairy. In fact, we had a student group do a study of our menus, and because we had already done so much work in reducing meat and reducing the meats that are tougher on the environment, we found that in fact it was just important for us to reduce the amount of dairy that was on our menu in order to meet climate goals that are part of the Cool Food Pledge. That was a real surprise for us, but an important learning, for example. We also focus a lot on the visual appeal of food because, of course, we eat with our eyes, never mind the flavor. So when you're serving, especially when you're serving plant-based dishes, they don't often have the same eye presentation that a meat dish does. So rethinking how we serve and making things creative. One example of that is we have a chef-crafted dish that we do in replacement of that American grill, and it's always focused on local vegetables. And that dish is beautiful and presented with love by that chef. And that eye appeal really invites people to jump in and taste something new and try it. And then we're also broadening the discourse to include health. For some people, talking about sustainability is a turnoff. They don't want to think about that. It's not a priority for them, but health may be. And in particular, with the generation of students that we're serving right now, many of them view making healthy choices as infinitely more important than other things. And so bringing them along on that journey of understanding also is important. We do a lot with local food procurement. We define local as 250 miles. So our campus is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which happens to be right on the Atlantic Ocean. So when we say a 250-mile radius, about 125 of that radius is out to sea. And that's, right, that has long defined our food culture. We're a community who, for whom seafood is a big part of our cuisine. And so we love to focus on local foods. We buy produce from more than 250 farms in our area, and depending on the season, anywhere from 20 to 70% of our produce is local, depending on the season. When we do use dairy products, we're using local dairy products, and we're using dairy products without hormones or antibiotics. And then we can't make everything on our campus. When we're serving 22,000 meals a day, there isn't enough space, especially in buildings as old as ours. And so we buy a number of products, but we buy them from local food artisans, and we're proud of those kinds of relationships as well, whether it be baked goods or pasta or even peanut butter. So we love to focus on local. Like you, we have lots of vendors coming to our campus every day to provide us fresh, healthy food. But sometimes you have to shake things up and do things differently. And an example for us of that is that we went through an extensive process to change how we purchase seafood so that we could buy more local seafood. And in particular, we could buy underutilized species. So Boston historically is a fishing town, right? It used to be one of the driving industries of our area. And over time, it has become more and more difficult for fishermen to make a living in our area. There is an entity called Red's Best, and this is a gentleman who was such an impassioned personal fisherman that he developed a business that was meant to represent this group of individual fishermen who were trying to make ends meet and trying to find an outlet for their catch. And what happens when you go out on a fishing boat is that you might go out to catch one kind of fish that is fairly lucrative, but inevitably you'll get lots more of other kinds of fish. And that's called the bycatch. And but it's important to them to sell that bycatch. So it's also beautiful fish, it's fresh fish. And so we finally sort of flipped the typical purchasing paradigm on its head. Instead of saying we want to buy a specific kind of fish, instead we said we're going to assign 2 menu slots, and you're just going to tell us what fish you have to give us based on that bycatch. Price matters, so we agreed in advance on what the price per pound would be, no matter what the fish was. And we created 2 slots so that one slot could be a slightly more expensive fish than another slot. And the day prior to service, we find out what that fish is going to be. We buy about 30,000 pounds of that fish over the course of an academic year. And it's unusual fish for our area. It's not fish you would walk into a traditional fish market and find, where our students are eating things like skate and monkfish and pollock and dogfish and John Dory. And that's unusual, and we're teaching them why that is important. When it comes to fish, it's all about the flavor profile. So in order to make this work, we just created some core recipes that would work with whatever fish was coming in. And then when we find out what fish it is, we decide which recipe we're going to apply. And it's really allowed us to change that dynamic for one ingredient, but that's a model for some of the other kinds of changes we've made. Similarly, we worked with a farmer and said we really are hoping to extend the kinds of produce we can buy into our winter season, which is, at the height of our academic year, right? And so the farmer told us what he could grow that would hold through the winter and therefore have this still local produce that was nice and healthy for our students, as another example. So we do serve a lot of food in a day, and it is inevitable that we're going to have excess. So we also believe heartily on the other end in making sure that we're managing food waste and trying not to let food be wasted, but instead to relieve our neighbors who might not have access to enough food. There's some steps along the way, right? It's not okay to just keep producing food and donating it. Food is a resource for our program, so it's important to us to mitigate that waste. And like you, we have a number of steps along the way to keep an eye on that. We have a menu management system that tracks how much food we have prepared the last 5 times we've served something in order to project what we ought to be serving. We batch cook. We try to break up our service periods into 15-minute increments so that we're only preparing as much food as we need for the next 15 minutes. We adjust portion sizes. So Once upon a time, we served a 5-ounce chicken breast. Today, we serve a 3-ounce chicken breast. We cut things into smaller pieces. It allows people to modulate and moderate the way that they like. And it also limits the wasted food that happens. And we adjust pan sizes through service. We might start off on a busy day with a full shotgun pan, but by the end of the meal period, be down to a quarter shotgun or a half shotgun, right? Depending on how many people we anticipate coming in. And anytime we don't put food out, right, we're mitigating that waste. We're limiting that. But if we do have leftover food, and we always have leftover food, we have found a way to donate it. So back in 2014, we got connected with a local food recovery entity called Food for Free, and they approached us and asked if we would consider donating to them. And our food safety laws here had long gave us the impression that it would not be okay to donate food, that it would put us in a liability situation. But we worked with the city and with our university's general counsel or legal counsel and with environmental health and safety professionals. And we took a close look at the laws and discovered that, in fact, we could donate food, that in the United States, there's something called the Good Samaritan Law, which protects you if in the course of your work, you have made every good faith effort to keep things safe and do it the right way. And even if something happens, as long as you were making a good faith effort to do the right thing, you're protected. For example, if you gave CPR to someone on the street and they died anyway, they couldn't, their family couldn't sue you because you'd made a good faith effort to do the right thing. Well, the same is true with our food donation. So we stepped in gently. We ran a collection at a pilot at a single location. Our largest undergraduate dining hall is called Annenberg. And at Annenberg, we started to collect food for donation. That photo in the bottom right corner is someone collecting food at the end of the meal period for donation. Food for Free would then come to our location and pick up that leftover food and then redistribute it to other entities in the area that might be offering, meal service lines for people who were food insecure. We learned a few lessons over the course of that. And by the end of our first year, we had donated 55,000 pounds of food. Now, it was really great to donate that much food, but not optimal to donate that much food. That in itself was a lesson. And out of that, we learned some things about tracking how much we were donating in order to reduce production, right? We learned what things we could keep versus donate, and managed to reduce that to a state today of about half as much of that gets donated annually. So I'm going to play a little video here for you because the next thing we learned to do is make when we started off, they were called family meals. They're individual meals, taking the leftover food at the end of the meal period and plating it up into individual meals that can then be provided at places like other college campus food pantries or hotels that are shelters for people who are between housing or things like that. So this was originally called Family Meals. It's now called Heat and Eats, but I'm going to show you a little video about the process itself.
Hunger is a huge problem in the greater Boston area. There are estimates and studies that indicate that about 1 in 10 people are food insecure in the area. And then, of course, in different populations, that number can be quite a bit higher. There are hungry people all over, so it's a huge problem. And we're trying to do a little bit to help it with this program.
We have 14 different dining facilities, and our students are on a mandatory meal plan. We have to be prepared to feed the numbers that come in. In this business, we're bound to have food left over, so we're just looking for a good way to be able to take that food and put it to good use.
Food for Free is a food rescue and hunger relief organization. We bridge the gap between waste and want. On one side of the equation, there's a lot of extra food out there, and on the other side, there's a lot of hungry people, and we help connect the two. 2 nights a week, a team of student volunteers, they're taking the leftover food from service for the day and plating it up into meals. They use a serving of grains, a serving of protein, and a serving of vegetables, seal them up, label them, put them in their freezer, and then our trucks come and pick them up a couple times a week, and we get them out to the families that need them.
So Harvard students come in a group with a bunch of other students. And I think from their perspective, it's a great way for them to interact with the depot staff and then also sort of talk to each other and interact while they're sort of creating this food. So it's a way for students to get to know their local depot staff. It's a way for students to create tangible results. And it's also a way for students to reach out to the local community in like a very convenient way. I think most students have really enjoyed the experience that they've had with the Family Meals program. There's a lot of people coming away smiling and sort of happily taking a picture. So I think a lot of people get a lot out of it. And I've had a lot of people ask if they can come again.
Mom, boys, breakfast. That means my kids. And Bert.
Control my
Oh,
device.
Katie, don't forget your lunch.
There we go. All right. So, in fact, the young woman Fiona who was in that video now lives in Australia. So as the video outlined, right, in addition to donating bulk food, we're packaging up these individual meals. We're doing that with student volunteer support and able to help feed our neighbors in need. We think a lot about staying successful with this program, both in managing our waste, but also helping others, right? It's not just about producing more food to feed more people. For us, that good cause can make people a little too generous. We still have a business to run and need to remain vigilant about how to reduce excess. And we just have to continuously monitor this program and encourage people to align with the guidelines. So one aspect of that was creating some really clear instructions for folks about what could be saved and used for another service period, what could be donated, and what could be discarded. We have a few other food insecurity approaches on our campus. And, the Family Meals program, or the Heat and Eats program, as it's now called, is an effort to collect food and share it with our neighbors in need. But the reality is that we also have students in need on our campus. And this is a rising experience across a lot of institutions. The cost of education has grown so high that once upon a time, if a student could go to college, everyone assumed they were fine financially and, we don't need to worry about them, right? Well, in fact, the rising cost of education and living expenses and all those other things means that we today have students who are food insecure, particularly the students who are using our professional school and campus cafes. So we do a lot of work around destigmatizing food insecurity and finding ways to support those individuals so that they can get assistance without feeling like they stand out from their peers. We think about these as meals with dignity, where they have access to healthy varied food without a complicated process. And there are a couple ways that we do this. At our Harvard School of Public Health, we have something called the Daily Dollar Deal. And this is a partnership with the university in which, and it started in 2020, and we have an option every day at either breakfast or lunch that is $1. It might be a sandwich, it might be an oatmeal and coffee. It might, it is a full meal for $1, and we don't require any validation for who can purchase that. And we have lots of people purchase it in a given day, and the university offsets the cost of that, right? So if that sandwich normally sells for $8, but we're selling it for $1, they're covering the in-between cost of the food cost for that, so that we don't lose in that. But meanwhile, their community can have this access in this communal and dignified way. In the most recent fiscal year, we did 43,000 transactions of these dollar deal dishes. We also have something called a Grad Plus meal plan. This is a meal plan that our professional school students can use in those cafes to buy food. It gets charged to their tuition bill, right? And in some of our schools, they are granting students a stipend that covers the value of that Grad Plus, so that essentially they have covered their cost for at least some of their food over the course of the semester, and they can use it anywhere on campus. It is impossible to tell a student who's received that funding for free from a student who has paid for it themselves. We also have a voucher program that happens in many of the professional schools, where people can pick up these vouchers, or they can receive them as gifts, they can receive them as recognitions, or they can receive them if they are in need of a meal. And it just lets them hand that into the cashier, and then the meal is charged back to the university. Another one that is also a waste management effort is an internal email group. At one of our professional schools, there is a lot of catering because they have a large number of events. At the end of the event, if there is food left over from the catered function, once the host of that event feels that the room is cleared, everyone who should have gotten food as part of that event is all set, they'll send out an email to this internal group of folks who have signed on just for that community, and then those folks know that they are welcome to come to whatever room is listed and have whatever is left from that catered function. Again, a way to mitigate waste and feed people who need it. And then finally, we have a campus food pantry that is currently being set up by a group of undergraduate students. And they're working with lots of the professional schools to consider how it might be a mobile pantry that can travel around our campus. So Harvard is in Cambridge, but it is fairly expansive. It extends a couple of miles in every direction, and then it also has a secondary campus in Boston. So they're trying to figure out how they can reach people where they are. A few more things that we do. We have something called the Food Literacy Project. This is a student food engagement education program. We find that our students are really excited to think and talk about food, but they want kind of short bites of information or experiential learning. Many of them have never cooked for themselves, and they're eager to get into a kitchen and try to learn some technique. This happens to be our chef, TJ Graceffa, teaching people how to make meatballs, spaghetti and meatballs. But we have a wide array of topics, everything from food trends to food systems thinking. How does our food system function and how can we make it better? We also have something called the Harvard Food Systems Initiative. This is a slightly more elevated dialogue that goes on between food systems professionals with an emphasis on those folks on our campus, whether they're faculty or professional school students who are thinking about and working in the food system. And we're trying to co-address various topics, including food waste as one of them. Let's see, we were recently named the greenest university from the Green Restaurant Association. The Green Restaurant is an association here in the States that is a third party that evaluates practices in your food service operation. And they make recommendations for how you can continuously improve. We really like this certification because, again, it's an outside perspective. It's a group of professionals who are thinking about facilities and all the ways that those facilities can address issues related to energy, water, waste, food, education, and more. They have a scorecard, and then you progressively improve through that scorecard as you do more and more things. Everything from recycled paper on our menu cards to how we compost and recycle, to equipment that we have built into our facilities to do things like reduce water usage or recapture waste heat from refrigeration to preheat water for the dishwasher, things like that, right? That reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from the facility itself. So that was a lot of content, none of it in a super deep dive, and I'm happy to take questions. I would